welcome back to the CineSkinny. It's the film podcast from the Skinny magazine. It's a very professional operation. I didn't just say to everybody before we came on mic, do you mind if I look up this YouTube video on how to fix the Rodecaster? So things are going well. We're back in the nice summer meeting room here at Codebase in Edinburgh. We've got a plant. I don't think it's real. We've got a TV. It's not switched on. And I have my three glorious colleagues.
That's a real plant. What are you talking about?
Right.
It's definitely real because it's dying.
It's definitely real because it's dying. The CineSkinny podcast. Right. I've got Anahi, Jamie, and Ellie with me this week. How is everybody?
Pretty good.
Good.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm all right. You know what? I'm feeling positive. I was going to say I'm worried that all the equipment might be broken and also that I can't recognize real plants anymore. But I don't think it's an issue. I don't think it's something that we should be concerned about, Jamie. Also, this is a lovely shot.
Oh, thank you. Great comment for radio. But,
Well, you know what? That's small talk out of the way. Fucking hell. Jesus. Right. Okay. On this week's episode of the CineSkinny podcast, where the atmosphere is great and everyone's attitude is right on the money, we're going to be talking about On Falling, which is the much talked about debut film from Edinburgh-based filmmaker Laura Carreira. We're going to be talking a bit about Glasgow Short Film Festival, HippFest, various bits of touring cinema. Jamie is going to talk to John Maclean about his new film Tornado, thanks to the magic of editing. Jamie's looking at me blankly.
I'm just panicking because I forgot we were talking about the Short Film Festival. So I'm scrambling here to get something to say.
Fuck a duck. Right, I'm going to give you a bit of time to work out what you're going to say about the Short Film Festival while I come to Anahi and say, dare I ask, Anahi, it's been a format point on this podcast for a number of years. What have you been watching? Have you been watching anything good? And would you like to talk about it for around 90 seconds to 2.5 minutes?
While Jamie collects his thoughts.
Jamie collects his thoughts on the Glasgow Short Film Festival. Bear in mind, Jamie wrote at least 4 pages of the magazine this month about the Glasgow Short Film Festival.
Yeah, Jamie, you're
a
so
magazine
fine.
which came out yesterday.
That's true.
Yeah, have some faith in yourself. I've watched quite a lot, mostly because I haven't been on this podcast for like a month. So
Welcome back. How are you?
I'm good. I have a month.
How ironic. You watch more films when you're not on the podcast.
Well, no, but I now have like a month's worth to tell you about.
I see.
Yeah. So
She got you there, to be fair.
I watched the first of the Three Colours trilogy. Never had seen any of them before. I
Blue.
really, really love Blue. Yeah. I really love The Double Life of Veronique. And so I really like that director's work. And so, yeah, this was just like really, really sad, but like really beautiful. Like, yeah, I really, really liked it. It was just like a really like kind of decadent little Friday evening film. And then the film that I watched, I think when I was in London, that I really loved and really took me by surprise was Walking and Talking, which is Nicole Holofcener. How do you say her name?
Holofcer?
Holofcener? Yeah, anyway, her. I don't think it's her first film, but it's one of her like early films from the 90s. And it's very much in that sort of Girlfriends, Frances Ha type landscape where it's two girlies who are best friends and then one of them gets engaged to get married. And it's just like a really beautiful, really like warm, very well observed kind of comedy, drama, slight romance thing. Just thinking about how people like build their lives and build their intimacies and does something that I find really, really interesting in film. And like other examples of that are broadcast news and Take This Waltz, where it's looking at people that are just a little bit dissatisfied with their lives and like really kind of delving into, yeah, like that idea of happiness. Is it something that you can ever achieve? Is it like a state that you can move towards? And what happens if you're just like in this in-between state where you're just like, oh, this is my life and I have to make something of it. And she does a really, really good job at like exploring that. So yeah, I watched that. Watched a whole bunch of other stuff. The new Bridget Jones, which was surprisingly good. I enjoyed that. Let's call it that.
That's good. And the thing about people being a little bit dissatisfied with their lives may be thematically linked to the review for this week, which is a film about people being a lot bit dissatisfied with their lives.
Yeah, but with a better reason, I feel. Like that was like capitalism and this girlie is just like has a nice apartment in New York and men are annoying. Do you know what I mean? Which is how I'm dissatisfied with my life. So like not to throw shade on it.
You're fine with the capitalism.
Yeah, the capitalism is like I'm trundling along with that.
Very much a, hey, he ain't talking about me.
Yeah.
Ellie, what have you got for us?
Lots of really like easy listening but watching. Easy watching. I watched a Warner Brothers animated film from the 90s called Quest for Camelot, which is a really, really interesting one because it's got this insane voice cast. Where is it? It's got like Cary Elwes, Gary Oldman. It's got Pierce Brosnan, John Gielgud's final role, but it's just unfortunately really disappointing because it's got such a strong premise. It's this kind of like reworking this sort of like new story within Arthurian canon where the daughter of a knight of the Round Table is desperate to take up her like to walk in her father's footsteps, and on her journey meets this guy in the woods who's like blind, and just such an interesting premise that really doesn't go anywhere because there's a lot of originality within it. But I sense that like, because this was in the middle of the Disney Renaissance, Warner Brothers were trying so hard to compete with Disney, they just sort of fill it with very distracting musical numbers, really annoying hokey animal characters, and yeah, just sort of like quite off-tone slapstick nonsense. So, you know, I don't know, like really beautifully done in some aspects, like great scenery, great environments, but like it's kind of got something really original there that it kind of eschews for trying to compete with Disney at the height of their popularity, which just doesn't make any sense. And speaking of Disney, I did watch my first ever Disney Channel original movies. Are we familiar with these? Have we seen any of these? No?
I don't think so.
I didn't grow up with them. It's like High School Musical. The sort of films that would like show
Some
on...
masterpieces.
Yeah, well, absolutely, yeah. But that's the thing, is like High School Musical I don't really count. I think I've seen it on, like someone put it on at a party at one point, and then obviously no one was paying attention to it, so whatever. But like I actually sat down with some friends who realised I'd never grown up with them, because people my age grew up with these films, and they made me watch them. So I watched Demi Lovato in Camp Rock, which is just genuinely such a delightful watch because it's just so busted. It's just so like... Everybody sings terribly. Everybody dances terribly. There's an incredibly uncomfortable on-screen romance with one of the Jonas Brothers. I still don't know which one because they all share a credit, so I don't even know which character was which.
How do they share a credit? How does that work?
Let me look it up because I can't remember. They're called like they're not playing the Jonas Brothers, right? They're playing a fictional teen boy band of three. I don't know if I can find out where.
Oh,
where
so
they're called Connect 3. The Jonas Brothers play a band called Connect 3, who are just like the Jonas Brothers. They're an internationally renowned teenage boy band. Who, like, one of them, because he's the bad boy, has been sent to this Camp Rock, which is a camp where kids learn to play music or whatever, to rehabilitate him or something. They don't use the word rehab, but you know. And yeah, so when I embarrassingly don't know my Jonas Brothers apart, which, you know, like I say, I was watching this with people who really love these films. And yeah, so I was just sort of like keeping that to myself, certain that when the credits rolled, I would finally be able to work out which one was meant to be the romantic lead. But then it just comes up at the end, like Demi Lovato is Mitchie, and then the Jonas Brothers is Connect 3. And I'm like, okay, I learned nothing, sorry.
Trying to set yourself up to be like, what about that blank Jonas? And yeah. Be like, what about those boys, eh?
He's the Jonas. I don't know how else to describe him.
A good bunch of boys.
It's really creepy. There's a point where they're like singing in front of the whole school and like singing into each other's microphones. It's very uncomfortable, but also unintentionally hilarious. So if you do want like a good laugh, if you do want a so bad it's good, you want to watch some Disney Channel original movies.
Excellent. We would never speak into each other's microphones. We're sat around like we're in Doctor Strangelove in a kind of like semicircular formation. Two things to just follow on from that. If you want kind of easy watching, you know, Big Joel, YouTube video essayist and bearded man Big Joel, has done a 6-hour video in which he watches all of the Disney Channel original movies.
I feel like I just learned about this guy. He did the God Is Not Dead films, which are a series of Christian propaganda films about how atheists, like, I don't know, he breaks it down. I'd never heard of them. They're insane. About like these films about essentially like American suburban Christians who want to homeschool their kids with Bible stuff, but they're angry because atheists assert that God is dead, when that's not really what atheists like believe in. Like this strange series of like 4 or 5 films that are all based on the premise that like secular lawmakers in America literally believe that like God was real but is now dead. So I'm going to check out this guy's video essays because I've learned a lot from him just from that one video.
Yes, just to clarify, he didn't make the God's Not Dead films. He just slagged them off in a series of YouTube videos. And the other thing is, when you talked about Connect 3, the band, I want to give a shout out to 368chickens.com, the game that we spent all lunchtime playing. It's a Tetris-style game, Jamie, in which you have to save the titular 368 chickens. There might be some more stuff about large numbers of animals later on. That's a call forward. Jamie, what have you been watching?
I play chess during lunch because I'm an intellectual. So.
How's your chess record, Jamie?
Hey, I usually beat you. What are you talking about?
Well, you got to try him at 368 chickens.
Well, you know what? I really walked into that one. I didn't think you would be so aggressive about it, but fuck me.
Oh, do you guys play chess together on your lunch
We played
breaks?
chess once or twice. I challenged Jamie once to chess, then beat him beginner's luck, and then he wanted a rematch. I gave him a rematch. He beat me handily, and we haven't really played since.
Yeah.
Okay, so actually you're even currently.
Yeah, we need this showdown. We need the 368 chickens showdown.
We'll do it. Best of 3.
Right, you're on. The CineSkinny Chess Championship. It's in the books. What have you been watching, Jamie?
Well, I've been watching GFF, but we've talked a lot about the Glasgow Film Festival. We're going to talk a little bit about films at Glasgow Film Festival. So I was just going to talk about something I've saw on TV that I really love and I actually don't think many people are chatting about it. A show called Common Side Effects. Has anyone been watching this?
I think, is it animated? I think I saw the first episode.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's by the people who made Scavenger Rain, which was also a really great show from a couple of years ago. That was about people lost in space. This is a kind of paranoid thriller about a guy who has discovered a mushroom that is essentially going to cure all disease. But the pharmaceutical companies want this destroyed because if this gets into the public, they will have no business. So they're trying to kill this guy, this dweeb, who's into mushrooms, and it's basically this guy in sandals being chased through cities with his tortoise. Sometimes
much like our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, a man in sandals being chased by the authorities.
Maybe as a crisis analogy, maybe perhaps what that would mean. I don't know. Pontius Pilate was the pharmaceutical company. I don't know who. Or the Romans, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, that's taking me off on a tangent. But anyway, it's really good. It's really funny. It's like there's like lots of great side characters. Like there's some like FBI agents. Who are the drug enforcement agents?
The DEA.
The DEA. They're involved, but they're kind of hapless, and they're always like more interested in like getting dates. There's his ex-girlfriend. Not his girlfriend. His ex-friend from school. Is the assistant to the head of a pharmaceutical company, and basically she runs the company because the guy's useless, and she wants to take this drug to market and make them lots of money, not knowing that actually this guy's going to be killed because of it. It's amazing. It's a really great, gripping thriller. Only 20 minutes each episode, and each one's a nail biter. I think people should be watching it.
Amazing. Where can they watch it?
They can watch it on Channel 4 for free.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What?
Oh my God.
Hot tip from Jamie Dunn. I'm just trying to make a bit of showmanship. What's wrong with that?
But it's also
imagine if I just got thank you for that information, Jamie. Let's move on to the next.
But it's also got really beautiful animation. If you remember, Scavenger Rain, it had like all this kind of surreal stuff about like these beautiful creatures and plants on this planet. This does that with like every time somebody takes the drug, you see inside their mind, and they do a kind of like flash. The life flashes before their eyes, and they go back to childhood, and then they're healed. It's quite incredible.
That sounds great. Channel 4, you say?
Yes.
Delightful. What a tip from the big man. I watched the last 2 Lord of the Rings films, but we don't have time to talk about them.
Oh.
For the first time?
No, I've seen them before.
It would have been a weird choice to only watch 2 and 3.
Yeah, I'd be like, I get the point. A bunch of wee fellas, there's a ring, there's a boy with a beard, there's another boy with a beard, and so on and so forth. Anahit is, of course, our expert on Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. Have we talked about Lord of the Rings much on the podcast?
No, we
We
should.
should do like an episode.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, we could do an episode on Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Oh my God, that'd be great.
Cool. Right, that's one in the diary for later, but not now, because we have things to talk about this week. Should we do Unfollowing first? Have a wee chat about a good film. So, Unfollowing. Aurora is a Portuguese woman working at an Amazon-like warehouse in a Scottish town, living in a shared house with kind of anonymous flatmates and trying pretty desperately to build some kind of human connections. Late capitalism is no fun. Please subscribe to our podcast. So, Joanna Santos plays Aurora. This is the debut feature, as mentioned earlier, from Edinburgh-based director Laura Carreira. It is a hit of the festival circuit. Best director at San Sebastian. Best first feature at London. 5 stars from the Skinny. What more accolades could a film require? Don't say an Oscar. We'll get onto that later. But Jamie, On Falling, like I say, it's been doing the rounds. It's been much talked about in the way that these films sometimes are. Ken Loach's production company 16 is involved in it, and it feels like a kind of modern look at some of the things that the Ken Loach films and like social realist cinema in general has been talking about for a while. But what do you think of this film? I don't think it's a spoiler to say that you think it's good.
Yeah, I think it's deeply impressive. I'd say it's probably the best Scottish debut since After Sun. Really exciting film, I think. And just one of the best depictions of the trap of capitalism. Because I think you were saying something like this in the office earlier, Peter, but I mentioned it in the interview with Carrera as well, that, you know, so often in movies, like, poverty is depicted in the most extreme ways, you know, so like it's always about homelessness or, you know, people living in squalor or, you know, people right on the edge of society. Whereas what's interesting about this film is Aurora's not on the edge. She's actually somebody who isn't in the margin. She's got a job. She lives in a house. She's essentially getting by, but the film shows like how hard, you know, life is for someone who seems like have enough, you know. It's like, and it's about how like actually it's just questioning the whole point of how we live today, where like we have a society where like basically people are working so hard but barely surviving, and you know, is like no life. You know, so like, you know, as someone who doesn't have I don't work in a Amazon warehouse. I'm not saying my job is similar to that, but I do, you know, I have lived in these types of beige HMO flats. You know, I have, you know, got to the end of the month and not really had enough money. And that's what it's about. It's not really anything extreme. It's basically somebody who just doesn't have quite enough, has no safety net. 1 month she needs money, and it's just basically following her as she kind of tries to make it to the end of the month to get paid. And it's like really gripping. You know, it's a film where like I was like, always expecting something terrible to happen to her until you realize actually the terrible thing is just like living in capitalism, you know, living paycheck to paycheck, living, you know, working really hard, but then coming home, being exhausted and actually having nothing to show for it. You know, yes, she's surviving, but she has no money to go out. She has basically no friends. Like all of her interactions are about money. Like the only thing she really talks about to her friend is like the money she owes her for petrol. She has to kind of rely on like handouts from people, and you see the kind of shame of that. So it's just it's a great film that just shows, I think, the kind of poverty that a lot of people suffer from is like the people who are working their arse off and getting no reward for it. And yeah, it's just done in a really kind of great way. And it's not really, I think what's so great about it is that there's no kind of showiness of it. There's no kind of big showdown. There's no breakdown from Aurora. It's really just, we just observe that actually I can see she's eating less and less each day. I can see that she's more and more tired each day. She's more and more lonely each day. Yeah, and it was like a really, really great depiction of what a lot of people go through.
I totally agree. Like I think that a lot of the like really strong anti-capitalist films that we've had in the last couple of years have been these kind of like black comedy satires. I think like Parasite and Triangle of Sadness and stuff like that. Whereas like this is just like straight up, you know, social realism, and it does tick those like really, really like it does like fit in that really interesting space where it's not sensationalizing poverty, and it's not using really severe images or huge confrontational ideas or anything like that. It is just in the middle of someone having just enough, and how just enough really isn't enough is the thing. But like, you know, I was sort of, you know, it is quite soul crushing, and it does really put you in there with her for the longest time. But I was actually surprised at how it does have like a lot of moments of humanity. Like this is one of those films where there's not necessarily any bad guys. Like you're sort of saying, it doesn't have these huge sort of like confrontational elements to it. Actually, we see loads of little moments of kindness from like, you know, a job interviewer who's really like patient and kind of forgiving with her, or like, you know, a guy in a park who really helps. Even Aurora herself, right? There's a scene where she you know, spends a rare night out in the club bathroom helping like a young woman who's like sort of passed out. So like I don't know. I do really appreciate that there is like a great kind of like frustration to watching it because no one's actually doing anything that terrible to each other. It's just this system that exists. But the film is sort of asserting that kind of like cynicism and distrust, like that sort of belongs to the corporations. Like she has this flatmate who is like a guy with a shaved head, and his job is he's a man with a van. So the first thing is kind of like, wow, that's quite a frightening situation to be like living in a flat share with a complete stranger and you don't know anything about him and you're kind of aware of that. But actually he just turns out to be like a really lovely guy, and it's like, yeah, it really places that kind of like cynicism in the hands of the corporation. I think the cruelest you ever see anyone, really, unless I'm forgetting, is like, even that her bosses seem quite like apologetic in the way that they kind of like have to tell her to work harder, and it's like some skinny guy that's like...
It's like, they're so banal though, it's like they're just like these middle managers who like, they'll bring her into the office and say, oh, you've done really good this week, well done. Do you want a Mars bar? Do you want like to pick a sweetie out? And it's like, not want to get paid better.
Yeah.
Or they'll have like the CEO of the company will come down to the factory floor and say, oh my God, record profits. But here's some cupcakes. You know, it's like this kind of patronizing.
Yeah, like it does. And especially like that's the sort of language that all of the kind of like corporate characters use. There's a point where someone comes to administer a drugs test and she has this very like sort of like, I don't know, lyrical kind of whimsical like Scottish voice where she's very nice and but like you can see if you watch the scene closely, she just shoots fucking daggers at people when she's like making sure that they're properly doing the drug test, and it's like very invasive and quite exploitative. But actually whenever we're outside of work, like there is like a lot of connection and there is like a lot of sort of like goodness out there. It's just that your work kind of separates you from it, which is just a really nuanced point and I think a huge strength of the film.
One thing I would say is that if you're looking for a baddie in this film, it is these folk who just fully toe the company line. And I think everybody in this room has probably worked in these kind of minimum wage jobs, like kind of bar jobs, like cinemas, cafes, etc., where the person who is like going around vigorously enforcing the rules of someone else, you know that they're not actually getting paid nearly enough to be this much of a bastard, but there is a relish that people take in it, in this thing of being like, oh, well, you know, you can't have a day off because you need to plan your life better and do things further in advance. It's like, I'm always surprised that like lower level managers in retail and hospitality don't get punched more often because like you're like, why? The only reason you would, there's a certain level, as much as we can say that like a film like this does show that actually it's a systemic issue and it's not about individual cruelty and all that, there is an individual cruelty required to carry out a system that is just unfair to your fellow people for no good reason other than someone's asked you to do it. It's not like you're being paid like 10 times, like if someone is a CEO mega bastard, like they're getting paid like out the wazoo, they'll just say or do anything because they're getting loads and loads of money. If you're like, excuse me, I get paid £27,000 a year and that's why you can't have Thursday off to go to the dentist. It's like, I will slap you very hard. That's not about anyone in particular or any specific situation. No named individuals. The CineSkinny doesn't take any responsibility for things that I may have just said, and they get edited out. Anahi, what did you think of On Falling? Do you think it was a good film? I think we all thought it was a good film.
I thought it was a really good film. Yeah, I was really impressed by just like the filmmaking here. Like I completely agree with what both of you said. And I think the way that Carreira like achieves this, like that kind of observational eye that the camera has, is really, really impressive. Those points, like when she's like pulled into the office and it's like, you've done really well and we'd like you, like as a reward, you can pick out a chocolate bar from the box. And the way that scene makes use of like pauses and like silences is really, really clever. There's really, really good blocking as well. There's this one scene where she's like in a chippy and like these like very drunk like women on I think a hen night like crowd around her and she's like smaller and smaller in the frame. There's like one bit where she's eating crisps and the camera just starts focusing on each individual crisp from the packet as it's like coming up, and just a sense that like her world is like crushing around her. And yeah, there's just like a real cleverness to the filmmaking and how it understands ideas of like space and silence and like, yeah, and how that can kind of create a really, really oppressive atmosphere. And all of that is, yeah, like you were saying, Jamie, it's not like this kind of good guy, bad guy thing. And it's not even that she's, on the brink of like maybe destitution, but it's like the bread and roses thing, right? Like she has no space for pleasure and she has no space for her own identity and to have friends and to have a life and to have interests. And that's like one of the things that capitalism like does, right? Like it alienates you and it grinds you down to like this, so that you're just like a worker, you're just like a part of the labor force. And we really see that with Aurora, that she's lost who she is and she can't even really recognize it. I just think it's so clever, like the way that this film conveys that sort of internal loss of self. Yeah, just really good, really sad.
When you started talking about the use of space, it did immediately remind me that this film does tune into like a very specific sensation, which is that like a job you hate is so much worse in Scotland because you're going into work when it's nighttime and you're leaving work when it's nighttime.
Yeah.
And it's like, I gotta say, like this is a pretty strong depiction, I think, of Edinburgh on screen. They read Scotland for filth. The amount of times that people say, oh, the weather is shit in this film, and they're right, like we deserve it. But like when they're in the canteen, they are eating what is, I'm sorry, it looks like the saddest mince and tatties you've ever seen. It's like,
you know how I feel about British cooking, and it did not improve watching this film.
I'm taking it on the chin, but like this is, it pulls no punches.
Yeah, it really doesn't. Yeah, that very specific sensation, that shot of like Forest Road, and it's like pitch black, and you like we've all walked down that road in November, and you're like, oh fuck, there's 3 more months of this to go. That's like such a particular visceral sensation.
Yeah, and it weirdly reminded me of What We Do in the Shadows, the TV series. The way that so much of it is shot in the dark means you can't tell whether it's very early in the morning or very late at night. And like you said, Ellie, when you're working a job where you're like, you will arrive in the dark, you will be in the dark, and you will leave in the dark. You're like, Jamie, do you have something else to say?
Well, I was just going to say, you mentioned at the start how it's been made by Ken Loach's production company, and it's I think it's actually the son of Rebecca O'Brien, who is also Loach's long-term producer. It's Jack O'Brien, I think his name is the producer here as well. It's his first film as well. So it does share a lot of DNA with Loach, but I think what's different is like we're saying, like Loach, as much as I think he was a great filmmaker, he always maybe over-sentimentalised his characters and made them a bit saintly. The thing is, Aurora's not a saint. Aurora actually is quite a flawed person, and I think actually she could do a lot of things better. You know, she makes mistakes in the film, and like I say, it doesn't have like a big baddie. That I think Loach would have definitely ramped up one of those middle managers and made them pure evil, pure bastards. I mean, they are bastards, but they're not like pure bastards in the way that they might be in a Loach film. So I think, and there's never like a point where they explain the poverty either. That's what I loved about the filmmaking. I think you're right, Annie, about it's just, there's a great scene, for example, and one of the best scenes is where Aurora's in a shower, and it's just, there's just a build-up of humiliation. So she's in the shower, she's got no money, she has to steal somebody's shampoo, okay? Not that bad. Then she's in an HMO, so obviously it's all prepaid electricity, and the electricity goes out. So again, another embarrassment. So she has to slink back to her room in her till, and then a bigger embarrassment, and she realises it was her turn to do the electricity, but she's no money. So she can hear her flatmate slagging her off behind her back. So it's just like it's never like explained Aurora's poor, she's got no cash. It's all done in the scene, and it's like, it's just so well done. Yeah.
That scene is so good, when she's in the shower, and that's the thing, like that kind of observational eye where she steals the shampoo and then she just splashes water on it so they won't be able to tell that it's been used. And it's just, I don't know, I like that level of like detail and understanding the mechanics of how much you have to think about this stuff.
And it's the thing that she's living with strangers. Like if you were living with your pal, of course you could just say, I nicked some shampoo this month, mine's next month. But when you're living with complete strangers, there's no one to turn to, you know? And that's the kind of, that's what's so great about it. It's like, it's really I've never actually seen that depicted, that kind of, you know, when you see films about flatmates, they're always good pals. Yeah. But if you, in this situation where your flatmates are changing every month, because they're moving in and out in these HMO situations, it's a very different atmosphere.
And dare I say it, maybe as a way to round this off, the reason that you don't see that in films is because the kind of filmmakers who were making films until very recently had never lived that life. Because they're like, oh, why don't you just go on the dole and then you'd be sorted for a flat? Like, why don't you just do X? You know, people who are like, oh, you know, it was cheaper back in my day. Well, we're not in your day now, are we? Like, we're in a day.
Are we?
We're in a day where like they're like, oh, you know, £13 an hour sounds like a lot. But it's not, because things are expensive now, you fucking dafty. And that is what this era, like this film feels like one of the early points of that era of filmmakers who have come up through like their school lives, their university lives, their like early filmmaking being heavily influenced by austerity, post-financial crash, the kind of like winnowing of the social safety net, the kind of general malaise of British society. And that is now being reflected in the films that are being made. So yeah, it's like that thing of like, if you're coming up in a kind of like post like Arthur Scargill, Maggie Thatcher environment, you probably are like, this is a battle of good and evil. Whereas now we're much more like, this is just a battle of, this is like a kind of trench warfare battle of survival against like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of other people who are all in exactly the same, not complete destitution, but as close as capitalism will allow you to get to while still being able to work in an Amazon brackets, not Amazon warehouse.
Can I also say, this is very tangential, but it was just something that I've been thinking about. I was in London a couple of weeks ago, and one of the days I went for a walk around where I used to live when I was like really, like when I was born through to when I was 8, which were these council estates around Islington. And just walking around them, I was like, these are actually, and I think they've now, a lot of them obviously under Thatcher and like post-Thatcher being sold off, but they were really nice in a lot of ways. Like they're like made of brick, they look really sturdy, a lot of them have like balconies. And obviously this is in London, but like this was a really rough part of London when I was growing up. It was like right behind like Holloway Prison, but they were really, really well built. And then when you compare that now to the kind of housing that is built for people that don't have money, and that kind of very temporary, flimsy, almost porter cabin new build, and it is actually fucking insane, the decline in this country in terms of like how people materially look after the not well off. And it wasn't that long ago. Like, I'm not that old. Do you know what I mean? And like that sort of decline in terms of housing and material conditions, and like comparing that in this film is just like very upsetting.
10 out of 10. You could have stopped at decline in this country. You chose to continue, and I appreciate that. Excellent. So Britain gubbed, but On Falling, good. But how good? Jamie, out of 5, hit me.
Yeah, 4.5. Really good film. I must see, I would say.
Nice. Ellie.
Agreed. 4.5.
I gave it 4, but actually I think 4.5. I'm going to bump it up.
I don't, you know what? I'll join you in the 4.5.
Yeah, baby.
It's a film so good, I gave up my no half stars rule. And that's the highest honour that can be bestowed upon a film. So it is out this Friday, 7th of March, at cinemas around the UK. Go and see it. It's very good. Okay, Jamie's interview with John Maclean, not the one from Die Hard, to follow shortly. But we thought with all these kind of like, we're in film festival season, parentheses, Scotland. There's a bunch of stuff going on. There's also a bunch of like interesting films on tour. And so we thought it would be nice to talk about some of these things and why they're good and fun and why you should go and see them. Solid premise for a segment. I thought, let's find out if I was right. So, Jamie, cover of the magazine this month. It's the Glasgow Short Film Festival.
Yes.
I thought we just had the Glasgow Film Festival. No, this is the Glasgow Short Film Festival. Jamie, tell us all about it.
The Glasgow Short Film Festival is one of my favourite festivals. I mean, it's called the Short Film Festival, but actually what's kind of cool about it is actually it's a whole mix of experimental films, it's animation, there's longer films. The opening film is The Disco, which is like this really cool moving image film about hot mess. And the, oh God. That's why you've been to prepare.
It's Simon Elbeck's Club Night, and the film is by Alex Hetherington.
Yes, thank you. Even though I interviewed the guy a couple of days ago.
Hey, you interviewed both of them, but carry on.
Anyway, it's just a really beautiful portrait of Simon and his club night and how it's really seemed to have affected the filmmaker, and he's very passionate about it. But it also it's got lots of kind of strands. It spills out into Simon's hearing loss. It spills into just the queer community in general. It talks a bit about queer history and how the dance floor has been very important to queer people over the years. It's a place to gather, being very political. So yeah, it's a film with like lots of elements to it, but it's just also very beautifully made and put together. great music. And it's actually also a kind of like, it's about community in terms of it's also made by a lot of kind of great artists from Glasgow. So it's Alex, the filmmakers, collaborated with a lot of local filmmakers on the sound and the image. So yeah, it's going to be a great opening, I think. I mean, other things I'm looking forward to, I would say I'm really looking forward to Welcome to the Multiverse, which is it's bringing back a program they did a couple of years ago, which is just essentially kind of weird and wonderful animation. So like animation which imagines kind of different worlds, multiverses, kind of sci-fi premises tends to be. That was like one of the better programs I've seen at JFF over the years, GSFF over the years. Also looking forward to Kaylee Tingang's film, which is a new commission. It's called Out of Office. She had a great film at Glasgow International this summer, if you saw that, or last summer, sorry, with Josie Keogh. Josie Keogh had made this sculpture of a woman you walked through her skirt, and then in the middle you had this fountain, and then you walked through it and you came to Kaylee's her video work. So yeah, she's a really great filmmaker, and I'm really looking forward to that world premiere. So that's a couple of the highlights I like the look of. But does anyone else have anything they want to shout out?
Yeah, I'd like to shout out, what is the program called? Your Body Dissolving Into Me, which is a late night thing on Thursday, the 20th of March at 10 p.m. And it's a series of short films, which I think are like, some of them are documentaries, I think, some are animation. And it's been curated by Shanlin Tam, who writes for Skinny sometimes, is a good pal. And it's in honor of their new book, or their first book, that is coming out tomorrow, I think, called Revolutionary Desires, The Political Power of the Sex Scene. So it's a lot about how we think about desire, the politics of how we show desire, and sex, and kind of tapping into contemporary discourse, which is obviously in the toilet. So I think they like really complicate a lot of that, and they've curated this program of short films around that, which is like a late night kind of sexy screening thing, which I think will be really fun. So I'm going to try and go to that if I can. There's also like a Q&A with some of the filmmakers afterwards, so that'll be really cute. And also another little shout out, I'm chairing Shanlin's book launch in Edinburgh on Wednesday?
I want to say, is it the 12th?
It's the 12th, which is a Wednesday?
Yes.
Yeah, Wednesday the 12th. So that you can do like a little double bill over that week.
It is at Lighthouse Books.
Thank you so much.
That's all right.
It is indeed.
Yes. Ellie, Jimmy, I'm going to come to you on HippFest shortly, so be prepared. But Ellie, I think I wanted to ask you about a film that we did not have a chance to talk about on the podcast, but that you interviewed the director of, and it is currently doing a lap of the UK and Ireland, The People's Joker, a film that you want to talk about contemporary discourse being in the toilet. The People's Joker is, well, I mean, you described The People's Joker. You spoke to the director, Vera Drew.
Yeah, of course. So The People's Joker is a film that premiered 2 years ago at the Toronto International Film Festival. It's Vera Drew's semi-autobiographical parody of superhero comic book films, wherein she plays the character of Harlequin the Joker, who is an aspiring comedian in Gotham City, who is trans, and is very much a trans coming-of-age narrative, but one that kind of lampoons a lot of the really popular tropes that you see in Batman films and comics. It's incredibly zany and incredibly multimedia. It came together from a casting call of over 100 different artists, 100 different styles of animation and filmmaking. So very much like it's very collage. Like one scene will be like 2D animation, and then it'll be followed by like video game graphics, and then it'll be like live actors on a green screen. So it is like a really wild and zany and quite comic book-like film, but also one that is, just like a hugely sort of popular cult film. I think it's maybe sort of the biggest cult film that I've been hearing of in 2025 so far, because, it sort of had this really troubled release where Warner Brothers supposedly threatened to litigate because of the infringement of copyright characters, but seemingly like the negotiations have gone well, and it is now released in the UK. I know for a fact that it's not playing regularly in Glasgow or Edinburgh, but I think that you're about to tell me where it will play.
I am indeed. So so it's been released in the UK by Matchbox Cine, pals of the pod, good folk in the film world up here and also elsewhere. So it's been on at the Cameo and it's been on at Eden Court in Inverness, and the next screening in Scotland is as part of Dundead, the Dundee like horror and genre film festival. So on the 16th of March at the DCA, you can catch People's Joker. It's playing a lot in the places you would expect, like big cities like that, London. But because it's the kind of film, and this is one of the things that I kind of wanted to allude to here, it's the kind of film where if it has this kind of roadshow format, hopefully it brings out everybody who wants to see it in one go. They all enjoy it and they talk about it and they have a memorable experience. That then encourages other people to want to see the film, and then that means it comes back, and then it has this kind of life where it's sort of like a Rolling Stone collecting people as it goes. So yeah, 16th of March at the DCA is the next chance to catch the People's Joker. And I think that Matchbox are open to putting on screenings basically wherever they can find enough people who will go. So that is the People's Joker. Check it out if you can. Road trip to Dundee. Or a road trip to Bo'ness, Jamie?
Yes. We did speak about HippFest a little bit, but yeah, I would say HippFest is a really fun festival to go to. Just one of the key things about it is there's always a live element. You know, these are silent films, always paired with either a pianist or a band or some sort of live music. And yeah, the films, some of them might be familiar, but I think what's also key about HippFest is usually they're unearthing films that haven't been shown very often. A good example of that would be something like Forgotten Face, which is an American film by Victor Schlesinger, and it's it's like a really amazing, fast-paced crime thriller that essentially was lost for years. So this is going to be one of the first times it's been shown in the UK since it was originally released. I've also got a really nice spotlight on Alma Revel, who was the partner of Alfred Hitchcock, and obviously Hitchcock, iconic filmmaker, but she edited and wrote most of his films, and I think has been a bit sort of sidelined and not sort of celebrated. So it's nice that they're celebrating her. Not only some films she made with Hitchcock, but films she made with other filmmakers. I really love the look of this film. Another forgotten film, or a lost film, The Cave of the Spider Woman. That's this kind of Chinese fantasy. Just looks to have like the most amazing lavish costumes. Like it's got the kind of that great kind of like silent era special effects, which are just like, it's mind-boggling that they could do that kind of stuff, and it's all in camera. So that's kind of worth checking out. And it's got things like Buster Keaton and John Ford and these kind of classic filmmakers. So it's got a bit of everything really. But I'd say the main reason to go would be to see it in the Hippodrome, which is like this amazing cinema. You've got the live accompaniment to each film, and it's just a really very wholesome, lovely atmosphere.
Amazing. It sounds like somebody was trying to like drive a motorbike through the studio a minute ago, but it's all right. I think we got away with it. And silent film brings me to the thing that I want to talk to, and arguably the reason that I orchestrated this entire segment in the first place. Yes, I want to talk to you all about Hundreds of Beavers, a throwback callback to the era of silent cinema and slapstick involving a man running around I believe the Wisconsin snowy wilderness being chased by men in beaver costumes and being hit quite a lot and pushed down the stairs and making kind of like enormous traps for a society of beavers who are much more technologically advanced than you might believe. This is a film that I saw when I was away on holiday in Bristol, and it was part of a massive UK and Ireland tour that it's doing. And the thing that was really notable about it, and it gives me hope for the future of the kino, is that people were excited to go to the cinema. I think that's one of the things about like festivals and tours and one-off events, is they give people a very good reason. Like, you can be like, oh, it's a good film on and I don't have anything to do. That's a good reason to go to the cinema. But like, there being a thing to go to and like an event to be part of and a community to kind of connect with, even if it's just for a brief moment, is one of the things that's really great about having these kind of like big, this is a screening as part of a tour screenings. It's a really good film. It's really funny. It's really silly. It's an amazing like technical achievement for a group of people who didn't have very much money and only apparently had 4 or 5 beaver costumes and had to do a lot of work in post-production. It's on at the Cameo. It's on at the GFT. It's on at the Burks Cinema in Aberfeldy. And it's on at Dundee Contemporary Arts over the course of the next few weeks. So if you want to go, you should go. It's very good fun.
I'll be there.
I would also
LA will be. Are you going to the one at GFT?
That's right, yeah.
Excellent. Look out for somebody dressed in a beaver costume harassing people in the queue.
Is that you?
No, it's part of the show.
Okay.
Okay.
Look out for someone annoying people. Couldn't be me.
I would also say there's a little tie with the Unfollowing, and I kind of feel these tours are kind of like basically anti-capitalist. You know, like the film business nowadays is essentially so concentrated on that first weekend. You know, like films, the only films that really succeed at the cinema are the ones with huge budgets who can like roll out hundreds of films on the first weekend and make tons of cash, and they can stay in the cinema. Whereas small independent films, what happens is they come to the cinema and basically they're there for a week and then disappear because they don't have the promotional nous and the kind of big budget and the muscle to like make space. So like by rolling out slowly, you can be a one-man band, you can go along as the filmmaker with your film, do it much more cheaply, but the idea is you get word of mouth, like you'll say, like it's like a Rolling Stone that gathers moss. Every town you get a bunch of fanatics who see it, talk about it online, and then by the time you're at the next town, you get more people in your audience.
And maybe the kind of apex predator of this kind of thing is coming back to the cameo once again, The Room, a film which is bad, but everyone loves, a film which has been on so many times, but still sells out every screening it's on, and a film which is eagerly piloted around the place by a combination. I think it's just Greg Sestero, who is one of the stars of the film, is doing like a Q&A this time at the cameo, but a combination of Greg Sestero and Tommy Wiseau piloting this sort of like insane cinematic voyage where this absolutely dogshit film just constantly makes the rounds of the independent and art house cinemas of various parts of the English-speaking world. It's incredible. And like you say, Jamie, it is this thing that like, if you can avoid playing the game that an enormous distributor or an enormous cinema chain wants you to play, and instead can be like, this film's good, and I'm going to show it to these 50 people, and if those 50 people like it, then they'll move on and tell some other people. Like, that is a good way of operating, I think.
It's kind of how films used to operate. Like before, we don't have so many prints. So it used to be that a film would actually be in cinemas for a long, long time. You had this idea of a second run where it would play the big cities, but then it would go to the kind of provinces and like would have a second life. And that doesn't really exist anymore. You know, like we just have like I say, some films, if you have a week in the cinema, you're lucky. So yeah, I think it's a nice way to like give films a longer life, longer time in cinema. And yeah, it makes it feel more special. It makes it a reason to like not just watch it in your house, you know?
Lovely stuff. So GSFF starts on the... GSFF and HippFest have exactly the same dates, don't they?
This is one thing that annoys me. Why? Come on, guys. There's got to be some crossover. I'm crossover. I want to go to both. So I would love if you change weekends.
I'm the crossover.
Yeah, but there's other people, you know.
It's me. Hi, I'm the crossover. It's me. So they're both the 18th to the 23rd, aren't they?
I think the 19th.
19th to the 23rd. People's Joker is on the 18th at the DCA. So you could go to that and then go to a bit of GSFF and a bit of HippFest. But
I really think if you actually contact Matchbox Cine, they will basically put it on if you can get enough people. So like if you have a cinema or you have a cinema club, I believe if you just contact them, they'll put it on for you.
Excellent. Which is just as well, because it's actually on the 16th of December. So if you're busy then, you're sorted.
16th of December?
16th of March.
Yeah, he did say December.
I did say December.
Yeah,
you know what?
You're not crazy.
I was wrong before.
No, that's okay.
But I see now.
The error of your ways.
I see the error of my ways. 16th of March. And then, yeah, hundreds of Beavers, various points throughout March at various locations around this cursed isle. And also in Ireland.
I would just say Unfollowing's also on tour. Like that's the thing. It's getting a kind of wider release, but actually Laura Carreira is going with the film and going to be doing Q&As all over the shop.
Amazing. How does this all tie together so well?
Crazy.
It's almost like we're four professional journalists who write about film all the time. Doesn't seem like it every day, but sometimes. Okay, and speaking of festivals and things of this nature, we're now going to play an interview that Jamie did with John Maclean.
Yes.
The Beta Band are back, but that's not what you spoke to him about. This was on the occasion of the world premiere of Tornado, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It's been 10 years since Slow West, which was a really brilliant, really funny, stylish Western that he made with Michael Fassbender 10 years ago. This is also Western, but it's a bit different. It's set in Scotland in 1790. It's much more of a kind of spaghetti Western mixed with Kurosawa. but it's a bit more bleak than that because it's set in Scotland, and it's also shot in the winter, as John will explain during the interview. So it's like a real kind of like very beautiful, but it's kind of very kind of dark, midwinter feel. It's about it starts with a young Japanese woman being chased through the woods by a gang of bandits led by Tim Roth and Jack Lowden, and then the film eventually flashes back to explain why the woman is running. So I won't go into too many details, but it's got a really explosive start, and yeah, it's set in 1790. We think of period films, British films set at that time. We think of Jane Austen, I guess, or that kind of like, what would that Georgian era? We don't think of like bandits and samurai swords and westerns. So it's a bit different.
Excellent. So this is Jamie and John Maclean.
This is probably an obvious question then. So, like, John, you've made 2 films now, both westerns, which is quite unusual for a filmmaker from this little island. Like, what appeals to you about that genre?
I think when I made Slow West, no one was really making westerns, so it felt like, especially not as their first film, so it felt like something quite unique. And I was very interested in America, and I was very interested in maybe Scottish people going to America, or that kind of time of American immigrants being in America rather than just Americans in 1860s cowboy land. So I think when I started writing this, it was really the samurai genre because I love westerns and I love samurai films as well, and I feel they sort of share from each other in the past, Kurosawa being influenced by John Ford, then Leone being influenced by Kurosawa, and even Lucas and Spielberg being influenced. So yeah, it's just such a huge part of cinema, westerns and samurai films, and I like genre. I just thought that period British drama hasn't really gone down the road of any kind of Western or that kind of genre very much. I can't really think of hardly any. So I just thought, why not? Surely 1790s Britain has the same kind of lawlessness as perhaps 1860s America.
Yeah, I mean that's what I really like, because we think of films set then, it's like it's the time of the Enlightenment. It's Georgian era, which is highfalutin. You've created a much different atmosphere.
Yeah, I just think, I wanted to stay away from sort of kings and queens and politics and even class to an extent, although I think class seeps into everything, everyone does, but not in the same way as maybe like a Bronte story or So I just felt that surely there were wild times. The closest I can think is maybe something like Jamaica Inn or something, but where the landscape is just wild and the people are just trying to survive.
And that's quite freeing, I think, because it means you can make something a bit more mythic. I feel your film is like a bit more elemental. It's like it's not set in a specific place, really. It could be anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to keep it. We shot in Scotland, but I wanted to keep it kind of like a sort of generic Britain. So it could be the Moors, or it could be Cornwall, or it could be the Lake District, or it could be the Highlands, So, because I wanted to comment really on Britain, on the sort of multicultural nature of early Britain. And I think if I'd been more specific about where it's set, I might have lost a bit of that power. But, I wanted it to be a Britain full of, a Japanese samurai, a French weightlifter, African bandit, So it was a similar idea to Slow West. I mean, I do see them as a kind of, I almost want to make a triptych, I always want to make 1, 2, and 3 of these kind of westerns, but I think that, yeah, keeping it sort of general. There was something, I think I read a quote by Sergio Leone saying that you make a mythic world and then that allows you to put real characters in there, and I think that I thought a lot about that. I thought a lot about if the world is, the world doesn't have to be super researched and real. It can be this sort of, it has to feel real enough to not be fantasy, but it doesn't have to be historically, absolutely here. And then within that, you just put real characters, you put characters with the same sort of wants as us, which is like, you know, survival, food, money, love, hate, greed, you know.
So was that, would you say, is the where the story originated, or was there another spark? You know, like was there?
Yeah, I mean, the sparks were perhaps loving Kurosawa films, you know, loving sort of Seven Samurai and Yojimbo and a lot of, you know, not even the samurai films, but High and Low and some of the early noir films. And then getting more and more into sort of Japanese cinema, Onibaba and Women of the Dunes and Mizoguchi films and Ozu films. So I got kind of quite heavily into Japanese cinema, everything from 1920s to 1960s, 70s. So I thought, how can I don't want to make a Japanese film because I'm not Japanese. So how can I, you know, do this? And that would be bring a Japanese person to Britain, you know. And I think so that was one spark. And the second spark, as I say, was just trying to make a British costume drama that's not to do with those kind of costumes. And then slowly, when I'm writing the script with my script editor, it's sort of slowly the subconscious kind of what you really want to write about seeps through, you know, and this sort of turned into a father-daughter story, you know, and I have kids, and that probably had a big effect. And how, you know, a father trying to teach the daughter, you know, his knowledge and her not being interested, you know, and it's probably I went through that with my own father when I was younger because he wanted to teach me a lot about the Highland clearances and about his Scottish sort of roots. And when I was younger, I just wasn't so interested. And the older you get, the more interested you get. So I think that's the real heart of it is the relationship between the Japanese father and the Japanese, you know, being lost trying to teach his Japanese daughter, not teaching her the right things, not teaching her don't steal money, you know. Um, and then the same on the flip side with the Tim Roth and Jack Lowden relationship, you know, the father not getting it right, you know, teaching the kids. And so yeah, those were the two sort of strands that appeared when I was writing the script.
You mentioned learning about Scotland. I think Scotland, even though it's not specifically set in Scotland, I think the landscape of
Yeah.
Scotland really adds to the kind of this atmosphere of lawlessness. You know, you've chosen a kind of quite hard corner of Scotland to film in.
Yeah, basically, we filmed in January, which was just the only time it all came together, and I just seized the chance, even though it got dark at 4 or 5 o'clock, which is quite mad when you've only got 25 days to shoot a film. It sort of boxed us in a little bit in terms of time, and we had to really work so fast, like crazy. But I think the plus side is you get that it's winter, so you get, you know, it's not just, it doesn't all look like a golf course, you know, you get this rugged, rough, browny, and the weather, you know, maybe we had the odd weather machine that we hardly used because of the wind and the, you know, so yeah, that was all fortuitous in the end. I mean, the I chose the location because I actually made a beta band video about 25 years ago, which was a little samurai film. And I set it in the same location because that's the location where the drummer is from. It was called Trouble or Troubled Samurai. I think it was going to be called Trouble in the end. But I think it's online, but it's the same location, and it's a sort of my first attempt at being influenced by that one was more influenced by maybe Shogun Assassin and a few of the sort of 70s samurais. So this one, so it's sort of slightly more superficial, but yeah, it's the ground. I laid the groundwork, I think, for this one in that video in terms of knowing when I was writing the script that that could be a great location. And the drummer of the Peter band's now become an art director in film, so it just made and he's from the Pentlands, so it just made absolutely sense to go to where he knows, you know, and use the same location. So it was absolutely ideal. And it's hardly used as well. It's sort of underused. Everyone when you shoot a film, I think everyone goes up north immediately, but you can be 15 minutes outside Edinburgh and you can be in the Pentlands and it feels like wild.
And I love how your film opens as well. You know, you open right in the heart of the action before we meet any of these characters, and then flashback later. I'm just wondering why you chose that structure. You know,
That was actually, I'm going to have to credit my script editor for that because I was on a bus and I was a bit stuck with the script and she called me and said, why don't we flip acts one and two, which was, you know, she earned her fee right there, I think, because it really helped. I mean, in terms of, as you say, having that kind of straight into the action opening. It also, I don't know, it's hard to sort of say why it worked, but it just seemed to work in the script. And sometimes you write that in the script and it works in the script, and then when it comes to shooting the film, it doesn't work. Funnily enough, Pitch Black Heist, my earlier short, I'd written in different in like jumping around, and it worked in the script and it worked when we were shooting, but when it came to the edit, I went back linear again because it didn't work. But I think with this, it just is. I tried a linear edit and it just didn't, it didn't work. So I think because it's set in one day as well, then just switching those acts just really sort of makes that one day seem more intense.
And it's also like almost dialogue free for like the first 10, 15 minutes as well.
Again, I mean, I love dialogue and I spend a lot of time writing dialogue, but I like dialogue to sound good or mean something. I don't like people just talking for the sake of it. So I tend to strip it back to the essentials. I think the whole film economy is my sort of, I find economy quite beautiful, so I think I'm always trying to use the least number of shots. I'm always trying to use the least number of words. I'm always, the actors are using the least number of movements, because I just feel that that economy is, I learned that from watching films of Bresson, for instance, but that economy is just, is very beautiful to me. So yeah, I mean, there was a scene I was thinking about the other day because I was watching a very talky film, a contemporary film that was just, they talked about their backstories and their family and their grandparents and how they got to this place and how they felt, and it was just a long talking when they were having breakfast. And I thought, oh my God, I've made a film where the two characters have breakfast and they're frying an egg and they just don't say anything. But I feel like one person offering the other chopsticks and the other saying, no, I want to use a fork. To me, that says, you know, I could have said, look, I want you to learn my culture of Japanese. I want you to use these. And she say, no, I want to be British. I want to use a fork 'cause we're in Britain. So it's just a way of replacing all that dialogue with a simple action I find quite pleasurable.
So you mentioned, you're influenced by samurai films. Obviously, there's a lot of Sergio Leone and stuff in there as well. But I think you could also just class it as a female revenge film as well, which is also a kind of rich genre. Is there any influences you're taking from that sort of side?
I kind of stayed away from perhaps things like, I was thinking of things like Lady Snowblood or things that maybe are more sort of Tarantino-esque. I mean, because I didn't want it to be out and out revenge, I had to be very careful because it's her fault. She does something bad, so I couldn't make it revenge. So I decided to make it more like survival. I think that she, everywhere she goes, she gets people in her close ones into big trouble. I'm careful of spoilers here.
Yeah.
And but when so she kind of boxes herself in and in and in and in until all she can do is turn and fight. There's nothing left to do. So I feel that's slightly different from revenge in a way. As I say, I think it would be revenge if she did nothing wrong and this happened to her. But yeah, definitely I was reading a lot of books and watching a lot of films about trying to get into the mind of, sort of a young female character. My script editor was making me read books like What Katie Did and kind of like young children's literature just to sort of get that, an understanding of that sort of frustration and brattishness and and I can solve this problem by doing this quick thing rather than, I can suddenly solve me and my father's problems by stealing money,
Yeah.
that kind of naivety, I think, was important.
And Tornado is a really important role. Can you talk about casting? Is it Koki? The
Okay, yeah. I mean, I just incredible luck for me because basically I've tried to make this film a few times and struggled to sort of raise the funds and we back then we were doing street casting in Britain because I wanted someone that was connected to both Japan and Britain, and someone perhaps with more of a British accent, or because the character's really torn between her Japanese father and wanting to be in Britain, and but we just couldn't find anyone. Basically, it was really tough to cast. It's all street casting is quite tough, especially I think when the actors are maybe 16, 17, 18. I think it's almost easier with younger and older, but it's just a tricky time, I think. And we couldn't quite get it. And then I was speaking to we were quite far down the road and got the film practically financed. And I was speaking to the distribution team, and the guy there said, "Oh, we made a film with this guy. We made a samurai film with this famous Japanese actor, and his daughter's maybe that age, And we researched the daughter, and the daughter had gone to British school in Japan, so had a very strong sort of British accent, or with a hint of Japanese, which was just ideal. And then as soon as Koki came on the Zoom, like it took about 1 second to realize that's who I wrote. Just from her look to her way she sort of moved and presented herself, I was just like, this is if she can act, then I've struck gold. And if she can fight with a sword, I've struck more gold. And it turns out that it was absolutely incredible with the sword. And she was absolutely brilliant at acting and amazing to work with. So I just can't sing her praises enough.
You touched on it there, the 10-year gap in the West. Is that just the nature of indie filmmaking now? It takes a while to
Yes.
put together, or was there other complications?
No, I mean, I made Slow West and came out in 15, in 16 and 17 and a bit of 18. I got the script. I wrote this script, and then from 18 to for those 5 years, I was trying to raise them. I was just getting sort of turned down a lot by financing. So it took me a long time to find people that wanted to make this. COVID got in the way, and I'm sort of glad I didn't make it in COVID, although being in the location was probably quite good for a COVID film in the middle of the Pentlands. But having said that, I'm glad, we didn't, because it was a very low budget and all the money had to hit the screen, when you're making a period drama with handmade costumes and shooting on film. It was kudos to the producers for making it for the budget we got. But yeah, no, that was just all raising money. Tough days, but I got it done.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope we don't have to wait 10 years for the next John
Thank
Maclean.
you. Me too. I hope so.
That was good, wasn't it? Lovely, insightful interview there. Good job, Jamie.
Thank you.
That's all right. It sounds facetious.
To them, there's nothing funny about it.
Exactly. Like,
it's just there was a good interview and you're laughing.
Oh, what a fun day we've had down the old podcast studio. So, on the way out the door, we should discuss the elephant in the room. The Oscars, the Academy Awards, the biggest night in Tinseltown, and so on and so forth. Does anyone have any comments on the Oscars? Anna Heat's yawning. I don't think she does.
No, not really.
Anna Heat's got nothing. Ellie?
I didn't watch it. Does that make me a bad film critic? That
No,
I don't stay up
Jesus.
late to watch the Oscars, and then I looked in the morning at the results, and there were some films had won films, and I was like, I kind of agree with that. Some films had won awards. I was like, I don't agree with that. That's what happens every year.
Yeah.
This year, nobody got punched. There was no insane costumes anybody was wearing. Nothing huge or scandalous happened.
I think all the scandalous stuff had happened before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, it's just kind of like, I don't know, a bit boring to me. But there are films that won awards that I did like. I like that Conclave got an award. That's a lot of fun. I like that Fun Films got an award. The Substance got an award. I'm here for it.
What did I get an award for?
The Substance, best costuming, makeup. Yeah. Which I think is fair.
Okay,
Good.
Yeah.
great.
Good for them. Jamie, you got anything for us?
I actually think this was a good year. Like, I'm actually really chuffed that Anora is Best Picture. It's one of the best, probably my favourite Best Picture since Parasite. I'm really chuffed that Sean Baker won 4 awards. I think he's a really good filmmaker, and it's well deserved. Although I did feel a bit sad for Brady Corbet, but I also enjoy how close the Brutalist boys are. I don't know if you did. You didn't watch the show, I guess.
I did not.
A lot of smooching.
How close were they?
A lot of smooching, but Brady Corbet just gave Adrian Brody and Daniel Bloomberg, who both won awards. Daniel Bloomberg is the composer, Adrian Brody's the main actor. big kisses on the lips.
Oh, that's
I'm down
cute.
for that.
Kissed.
Other big surprises. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm really happy that I'm Still Here won Best International Feature over Emilio Perez. What a Sal's film. Just because Brazil were really psyched for it. Like I love that Brazil are celebrating. It's nice to see the underdogs. Talking about underdogs, I was really chuffed that Flow won the Best Animation. Like I think it's great. Like it's like this low budget Latvian film. You remember how like Godzilla -1 won last year? Like this is the Godzilla -1 of this year. Like this kind of underdog beating like Disney and all those big companies. And I also hated The Wild Robot, if you remember. So I was very happy to see that lose. And then No Other Land winning Best Doc, I think was like an amazing achievement. Like everybody wrote it off. Like they never thought that like the Hollywood would vote for this film. It's made before the war in Gaza, but it's basically talking about the occupation of Gaza, made by a collection of Palestinian and Israeli filmmakers. They gave a beautiful speech at the ceremony, and yeah, I thought it was really inspiring.
And the funniest part was Gal Gadot had to flee the scene. Well, didn't have to.
Did she?
Gal Gadot came out on stage.
Well, she was originally going to be presenting that award, and I think they wisely decided that
She was going to present Best Documentary.
she was going to present the best, and they moved her to like Best Sound, I think, or something like that. And but she was like essentially after it.
Yeah, in case she just like reflex, just Krav Maga'd one of the Palestinian boys to the floor. I'll have to cut that.
Why?
Nah, you're right. Actually, I don't have to cut that. It's fine. Okay, cool. Well, that's the Oscars. That's GSFF and HippFest plug. That's me talked about Hundreds of Beavers, as I've been promising to for weeks. On Falling's very good. John Maclean loves samurai films. I'll tell you that much. And yeah, we had a lovely time. So, thank you, Anahit.
Thank you.
Cheers, Ellie.
Thank you.
Ta, Jamie.
Ta.
This has been the CineSkinny. I'm going to go and have a lie down now.
You're really...
Yeah, we will be back in 2 weeks. And yeah, thank you for listening and goodbye. Bye.
Bye.